January 2026. Persian Gulf. The sea looks peaceful, but history has taught us something about calm water. It lies. Beneath that surface, fleets are maneuvering, satellites are tracking, submarines are listening, missile crews are waiting, and somewhere in that vast stretch of dark water, two American aircraft carriers are moving closer to the most dangerous choke point on Earth. The Pentagon calls it deterrence, but deterrence only works until it doesn't, because war is not about the first strike. It's about what happens after the first strike. And that's where the real story begins. At the center of the formation sails the USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN 72, a 100,000-ton nuclear-powered fortress. Its deck carries the F-35C Lightning II, America's stealth scalpel, invisible to radar, networked, surgical. This aircraft was built for one mission: break the door down quietly. It flies clean, weapons hidden internally to preserve its radar cross-section. It can slip through advanced air defense systems. It can identify, target, and eliminate high-value nodes. It is the perfect first punch. But here's the question nobody asks. How many punches can it throw? Because stealth comes at a cost. Internal weapons bays mean limited payload. 2 heavy bombs, a handful of missiles. Precision, yes. Volume, no. And in prolonged warfare, volume matters more than elegance. At the same time, US Air Force F-15E Strike Eagles sit armed at regional air bases. Massive payloads. 23,000 pounds of ordnance per jet. They are the hammer. But every hammer needs a foundation. And that foundation is concrete. Runways. Fuel farms. Hardened shelters. In a conflict with Iran, those fixed locations become countdown timers. Iran's ballistic missile doctrine revolves around one objective: runway denial. Crater the airstrip, destroy the fuel, collapse the sortie rate. It doesn't matter how powerful the aircraft is. If it can't take off, it's irrelevant. 10 minutes into a high-intensity conflict, air bases across the Gulf could be smoking fields of twisted metal. The Strike Eagle becomes grounded steel. The hammer shatters. So now we're left with a fragile equation. Stealth that lacks mass. Air power that depends on vulnerable geography. And an adversary who knows exactly where to strike. Which brings us to the carrier nobody talks about first. Steaming east across the Atlantic is the USS George H.W. Bush CVN 77, the last Nimitz-class ever built. And the strangest, this ship sits between generations. Not fully old, not fully new. A bridge between the Cold War and the digital battlefield. And bridges carry weight, sometimes too much. CVN 77 carries a permanent list to starboard. A natural lean. That flaw wasn't an accident. Engineers redesigned the bow, adding a massive bulbous extension to improve hydrodynamic efficiency. The concept was elegant, destructive interference. The bulb creates a counterwave that cancels the ship's natural bow wave, reducing drag and improving fuel efficiency. On paper, it worked, but buoyancy shifted. Stability changed. The center of gravity moved just enough to create imbalance. So the Navy made a brutal decision. They didn't redesign the hull. They added hundreds of tons of solid ballast to the port side. Iron and lead, permanently welded into the ship's structure. Dead weight to keep it upright. Think about the symbolism. To move faster, they had to make it heavier. To be stable, they had to accept imperfection. And that philosophy defines its role in 2026. Because the Bush is not here to be stealthy. It's here to be relentless. Look at its flight deck. You won't see rows of F-35Cs. You'll see F-18EF Super Hornets. Upgraded Block 3 variants. To an amateur, that looks outdated. To a strategist, it's freedom. The Super Hornet does not need internal weapon bays. It carries everything externally. Full hardpoints, extended fuel tanks, 10 bombs instead of 2, long-range anti-ship missiles, heavy strike packages. The Lincoln opens the door. The Bush floods the room. While stealth aircraft neutralize air defenses, the Super Hornets provide sustained bombardment capability. They operate in beast mode. They trade invisibility for mass. And in attrition warfare, mass wins. But mobility is the Bush's greatest weapon. Unlike air bases in Qatar or the UAE, CVN-77 cannot be pre-targeted. It moves, it repositions, it shifts launch cycles, it brings its own runway, its own fuel, its own city. If regional airfields burn, it keeps launching. If stealth inventories shrink, it keeps firing. If supply chains stretch thin, it remains self-contained. This is not just reinforcement, this is redundancy by design. And yet, the Gulf is not only threatened from above. Below the surface, diesel-electric submarines wait. Iran's Kilo-class boats are quiet hunters. On battery power, they become nearly invisible to passive sonar. Normally, a carrier's propellers create cavitation, noisy pressure bubbles that collapse and generate detectable sound. But CVN-77 introduced modified propeller geometry. The design delays cavitation onset. It reduces acoustic signature. It doesn't make the ship silent, but it shortens the detection window that forces submarines to close distance. And closing distance means entering escort kill zones. Destroyers equipped with advanced sonar and anti-submarine weapons. The carrier becomes bait, but protected bait. Now let's address its limitation. The Bush runs on two Westinghouse, a 4W nuclear reactors, reliable but built on older electrical architecture. Unlike the newer Gerald R. Ford-class aircraft carriers, it cannot generate massive surplus electricity for large-scale laser systems. It does not carry futuristic directed energy shields. It relies on layered defense. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers escort the carrier. Their electronic warfare systems don't just detect threats, they attack them. Instead of firing million-dollar interceptors at inexpensive drones, they use electromagnetic warfare to fry guidance systems. They sever data links. They disrupt targeting. Electricity becomes ammunition. Infinite magazine as long as generators run. Meanwhile, EA-18G Growlers launch from the Bush. Their jamming systems don't simply create static. They create deception. False radar echoes, phantom formations, electronic mirages. Stealth hides from radar. Growlers blinded. Destroyers shielded. Super Hornets strike. Layered warfare. Here's how it unfolds in combat. F-35Cs from the Lincoln move forward in passive mode. They do not transmit. They listen. They map radar emissions. They track mobile missile launchers. They identify high-value nodes. Instead of expending limited munitions, they transmit targeting data across secure networks. In milliseconds, coordinates reach the Bush. Super Hornets launch heavy. They stay outside high-threat zones. From standoff range, they release long-range missiles. Anti-radiation weapons eliminate radar. Cruise missiles strike command centers. Anti-ship missiles target naval assets. The F-35 points. The Super Hornet fires. Stealth exposes. Mass destroys. That is the doctrine. Flush and crush. Remove one carrier and the equation weakens. Add CVN-77 and sustainability returns. Deep inside the Bush is a tribute room. Flight logs, artifacts, a model of the Avenger torpedo bomber flown by Lieutenant George H.W. Bush in 1944. Shot down, rescued from open ocean, survived. That legacy lives inside this hull. And perhaps that's fitting, because CVN-77 mirrors that story. Not flawless, tested, weighted, but resilient. In a world obsessed with sleek next-generation platforms, the USS George H.W. Bush CVN-77 stands apart. It carries ballast just to stand straight. It blends experimental hydrodynamics with Cold War reactors. It lacks futuristic lasers. It isn't elegant. But war does not reward elegance. War rewards endurance. When runways are gone, when stealth loses its surprise, when missile stocks thin, the side that keeps launching aircraft wins. The Lincoln is precision. The Bush is persistence. And in prolonged conflict, persistence decides outcomes. This is sea warfare explained. And in modern naval warfare, perfection is optional. Endurance is not.